Good evening and welcome to our Sioux Falls City Council meeting. We will start our meeting with a roll call of the Sioux Falls City Councilors that are present.
Council members Erickson.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jamison.
Here.
Karski.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Rolfing. Staggers.
Present.
Anderson.
All righty, thank you. Tonight's meeting we will begin with an invocation, and immediately after the invocation we'll go into our Pledge of Allegiance. So tonight's invocation is by David Thompson of Empire Baptist Temple. I'm going to ask everybody to stand, and after the invocation we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Lord God, I want to say thank you for the privilege to be here tonight, and want to say thanks to you for all that you've done for the city of Sioux Falls. And Lord, also thanks to the people who've given their time and themselves dedicated to making it a better place. And Lord, ask your hand upon the meeting tonight and all the planning that's taken place. Give wisdom to these folks and guidance. Lord, we've seen your hand in it, and Lord, can pray that you might continue that. Such a great city that we have, and I do truly feel privileged. Lord, just ask again that you'd encamp around this meeting tonight, and that your will might be done. Well, thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Sir.
Okay, Counselor, we looking for approval of our consent agenda.
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Second, Erickson.
We have a motion and a second. Erpenbach and Erickson, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Regular agenda.
Was our consent agenda, yes. And now for our regular agenda.
Move to approve.
Second, Kiley.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All righty. To our citizens of Sioux Falls, welcome to our meeting. This is the time of our meeting where we take public input. We ask anybody that would like to address the council that it be about a non-agenda item. You have 5 minutes, and if you'd like to talk to your council, now is the time to do so. Anybody interested in addressing the council? All righty. We will go on to our regular agenda then.
Item 7 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising temporary employee provisions of Chapter 39, Personnel Regulations and Benefits, Retirement and Pensions.
Welcome, Mr. O'Toole.
City Council, Bill O'Toole, Human Resources Director. Again, this is a second reading revising Chapter 39 of the Personnel Ordinances in a manner that allows us to comply with the 2015 requirements of the Affordable Care Act. And what we're doing with these ordinance changes is redefining 4 different definitions of our temporary employee group and deleting all the old. So it looks like there's quite a bit of activity inside this, but ultimately what we're doing is redefining our temporary employees so that we're identifying the number of hours that they're able to work and the duration that they're able to work in a manner that, again, allows us to comply with the 2015 requirements of the Affordable Care Act. Rather than get into a lot of the details, I think I'll just stop with that explanation and be happy to answer any questions that the council might have with respect to this proposal.
All righty. This is where we can take public input on this item. Anybody from the public like to address the council regarding this ordinance? Questions from the council? Council Staglers.
Yes, Bill, bottom line, are we going to be paying more because of Obamacare and this ordinance proposed change, or are we going to be paying less or about the same?
The way we have defined the parameters for our temporary employees doesn't really change anything with respect to that employee group because they weren't afforded health care benefits before.
Okay.
We have created one new category that if we utilize that category, they would collect no other benefits other than health care benefits. And we don't envision that being a widely used definition. So to the extent that we would have some employees in that newer definition, and it's one of those that if they work more than 28 hours per week, more than 6 months, we would be required to extend them health care benefits, whereas in the past we didn't have to do that before. So to that end, it would cost us more in the sense of premiums in that regard. But again, we would envision that being a very small group, probably less than 12. The other thing that I want to advise the council is that we have met with virtually all the departments and we've reviewed the kind of logistical issues that surround these new definitions, and we believe them to be very workable.
If I could just ask then, overall, the city of Sioux Falls, are we going to be paying more for medical insurance next year? I mean, overall, counting everybody, or the same or less, or how does that look?
I wouldn't say it would be substantially more. Again, only slightly to the extent that we would now have to offer this small group of temporary employees coverage. So we would incur premium costs and obviously health care costs, whereas we hadn't before. And again, I don't have any numbers to suggest what adding 10 more people to the plan would be in terms of the number of lives that we're already covering, but it would only be slightly more.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Bill, does the ordinance and does the requirements, the federal requirements, say that we must provide health care to these folks or that we must offer it to them?
Basically what it's getting at is depending on how long you've worked, you work for an organization, the number of hours and duration. That's why we've carefully crafted these definitions in a way that protects the city from a liability standpoint. Because one of the things that we did do is we said, well, let's take a look if we just said, if we were to offer health care coverage to our temporary employees. That is a substantial decision. In fact, we hire anywhere from 500 to 700 temporary employees on an annual basis, and we looked at just a sample of about 500. And if those 500 employees were extended health care benefits and elected single coverage, that would be an additional $2 million in premiums alone in terms of the cost to the city, not any claims expenses. If that same group were to provide family coverage, it went over a $6 million cost in premiums. So it's obviously a very substantial decision for us to clearly define where that is so that we're protecting ourselves from that issue. And again, for the most part, the definitions are changing to comply with the Affordable Care Act, but we're not now extending benefits where we weren't before, with the exception of that one new category.
Right. Thank you.
Move for approval. Kylie.
Second, Erpenbach.
We have a motion and a second to approve. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
That is passed by a vote of 6-0.
Next item is item 8, is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota approving amendment number 8 to wastewater agreement number 940466 between the City of Sioux Falls and the City of Brandon and amending the regional wastewater rates charged to the City of Brandon.
Welcome, Mr. Cotter.
Good evening, Council Chair and Council members. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. First, I'd like to recognize Brian Reed is in the audience tonight. He's the City Administrator for Brandon. All right, just a quick recap. Last week we shared a presentation on the wastewater agreement that we've had with Brandon for the past 20 years, and specifically a lot of the activity that we've engaged with the City of Brandon over the past 14 months. Much of that has included a number of meetings, a number of communication steps to, again, continue to advance this discussion on multiple levels on regionalization, environmental, plant sizing, those numbers, and we're able to share that with you last week and really bring you up to speed as our two cities are growing together and will ultimately our growth areas will touch These are very big, important topics for our two communities to be talking about. Those discussions in the presentation last week included sharing the results that came out of the peer review, which was always a good exercise. Anytime we have something complicated in public works, we like to go to an outside agency, whether we're designing a new roundabout or a new landfill lagoon or a new landfill cell. We want to make sure that we put as much emphasis on making the right decisions early on in the design phase to hopefully mitigate any of those risks. And that's ultimately what we undertook here and raised the number of concerns that Brandon was able to take and consider in their evaluation. To further the communication, and one of the comments that came out of last week is we did make a formal request to the City of Brandon's mayor and each of their council members this last week, asking for us to be able to come to their next scheduled council meeting and further discuss this topic. And so we certainly hope that we hear back on that very soon. And then the other item, when we had closed the conversation last week, Councilor Erpenbach said, what are you asking us to approve or not approve? And one of the things we'd asked was for some additional time to sit down with the City of Brandon. And we were able to sit down with Brian, their city attorney, and one of their council members to work through some alternate language. When we originally started this discussion, there was really one primary site. We understand that there's still only one primary site, but there is the opportunity to look at additional sites. And so to be able to recognize that they will look at additional sites, we did modify the agreement, and if it's okay, Council Chair, I'll just take you through the two sections. So one of the whereas was added. Whereas it is necessary for Sioux Falls to obtain updates regarding Brandon's site analysis and planning efforts for the new Brandon plant in order to assess Sioux Falls' own wastewater management and growth planning needs. One of the questions that come up the other day is, why is it important from a planning perspective for us to know? Well, essentially, if we grow on average of 3,000 people per year, the population of Brandon is essentially 3 years of our growth area and of our growth projections. And that's critical as we either reserve them a spot and know that we're going to treat their wastewater or not. And so, again, it's important for us to understand that, because if they truly do cite this in a mutually acceptable place, we know that we've got 3 more years of growth in our plant that we can plan for. Okay, and then Section 4 speaks to how we'll get these routine updates. And so it says, commencing on December 15th, and I won't read this whole item, but I think the first half of it's key. Commencing on December 15, 2014, through the term of this amended agreement, and this amended agreement, again, would take Brandon with a wastewater services agreement for 3 years. Brandon will provide monthly project reports, which include a status update identifying any site that Brandon is actively studying, including providing the acquisition status for each site. Number 2, the status of the design phase, such as whether any construction contracts have been signed, whether any survey has been completed, and the status of the design plans. Item 3, regulatory review and approval status. And item 4, project timeline. The report is due on the 15th of each month. If it's not submitted in time, they do have 7 days to cure the breach. If they don't cure the breach, there's a penalty clause in that section as well. But that's essentially the revised language. Brandon Council did have a special meeting on Monday to review and discuss this. They did approve this contract, and we're here tonight to ask you for your approval as well. We're in support of this revised language that we've worked through. Do you have any questions?
This is a second reading, so before we take questions, we will take public input. So is there anybody from the public that would like to address this agenda item? Questions from the council? Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Mark, in your comments, you mentioned mutually acceptable between Sioux Falls and Brandon. I guess I'm wondering about mutually acceptable. I mean, they're an independent sovereign government. Is there somewhere along the line where we can compel them to be, to have a mutually acceptable agreement with this? Or can you explain that maybe?
Yeah, I think, and maybe I overstated that point. I think the key is that one of the reasons we've objected to this type of technology and the location is in proximity to our future growth area, and given some of the hurdles that these systems have and quality of life issues. Again, I think we've shown value in doing a peer review to identify a number of risks that this type of system can bring on. And we truly just want to work cooperatively together to not only help select the right technology, if you will, but also just in recognizing that this is very close to our future growth area and that we should be concerned, and not only from the proximity, but also some of the other environmental constraints that were identified with floodways, floodplains, and groundwater protection areas. And so that would be one of the things that I think it's very difficult to have a crystal ball. But the fact that this is in a groundwater protection area, a significant amount of this area, I think all of our communities should be very conscious of where our groundwater sources will come. We may all be sitting fine for the next generation, but what will the next generation need? And ultimately, when you make this decision, this is a 50-year decision. And so I don't mean to overstep the mutually acceptable area. I would just say as our two communities do in this whole metro area grow, and we will grow together. I mean, our two communities will touch. These are topics that we need to be talking about on how do we deliver one of the most basic services for the lowest cost. We're a huge advocate for regionalization, and will continue to be. Okay.
Councillor Jameson.
I was just going to state that this, turn on my mic first and state that this ordinance has created some challenges for all of us, and there's been a lot of communication efforts at play and some challenges to get some things done. But we've come together with an agreement that both bodies have agreed upon generally, and we're working hard to continue our communication efforts to build a relationship with a community that we are going to be joining sooner than we can imagine. With the efforts that we're going to be doing in early December on our own, Mark's efforts, Brian's efforts, the Brandon City Council's efforts, we're all kind of molding together for the first time in a way we've never done before. And it's not going to be all fun and games, but it's going to be a little bit of work. But we're working on it. And I would urge us all to continue to keep working to communicate better. Communication. And I think we'll have two great communities blend together. I would make a motion to approve.
A motion, looking for a second.
Second. Erpenbach.
Second, Erpenbach, all righty. Other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
That is passed by a vote of 6-0. Number 9, please.
Item 9 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota approving water tank lease agreements, Menlo Tower.
Good evening. Darren Fries, Public Works Water Division. Item number 9 refers to communication devices, commonly referred to as antennas inside and on top of Menlo Water Tower. There are 4 tenants with 4 different leases, but they're all on Menlo Tower. All 4 leases are for existing tenants. All 4 tenants are currently in good standing, and all 4 tenants are exclusive to the Menlo Tower site. We would appreciate your support of this item and these agreements.
All right, this is a second reading. Again, we take public input at second readings. Anybody from the public like to comment on this item? Council?
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Second, Kylie.
Motion and a second. Questions, Councillor Staggers?
Yes, just to clarify, these 4 tenants that we have, are they the 4 tenants we've had during the past several years?
All 4 tenants have been on that tower for over a decade.
Over a decade?
Yep,
Oh,
this is
okay.
just a new lease. The old leases had expired, and when we took over from the third-party management company, they had expired, and we're just adding on to the terms and going with our standard lease form.
And then the painting, when's that going to take place?
I think we're looking at either late summer or early fall of 2015.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
That is passed by a vote of 6-0. That concludes our agenda. Councilor Staggers, I believe we have some USF students here.
Yes, once again, we have quite a few students here tonight, eager to learn about how the city council operates, so.
And they rather short meeting. The ones last week were here for 2 hours. Do they all get the same amount of credit?
It's the same. It's kind of a gamble, you know.
Depends on
They
what
lucked
which
out
one you
tonight.
come to. Okay. I need a motion to adjourn?
Point of order, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Was there a motion on that last item? We were
Yes.
just having a side
Yes, we had a motion and a second on the memo.
Okay, we were just wanting to make sure. We weren't
Yes.
sure.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn, how about that?
All right.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.